Long before orchards, farms, or even the idea of cultivation, there were fruits that no human has ever seen, tasted, or touched. They grew in worlds that no longer exist, under skies that were thicker, warmer, and filled with life forms both familiar and utterly alien. These were the first fruits on Earth, products of an evolutionary leap that changed plant life forever, and yet every single one of them is gone. To understand these lost fruits, it is necessary to step back into a time when plants themselves were still experimenting with survival. For hundreds of millions of years, reproduction on land relied on spores. These tiny, dust-like particles drifted through the air, dependent on chance and moisture to continue the cycle of life. It was an effective strategy in a world dominated by ferns, mosses, and early vascular plants, but it came with limitations. Reproduction was uncertain, fragile, and deeply tied to environmental conditions. Then, sometime during the late Devonian period and into the Carboniferous, a quiet transformation began. Plants started to develop seeds, structures that could protect and nourish the next generation. Seeds were revolutionary. They allowed plants to reproduce without relying entirely on water, and they provided a built-in survival kit for the embryo inside. This innovation gave rise to a new group of plants, often referred to as seed plants, and with them came the earliest forms of what could eventually become fruit. However, these early fruits were not like those known today. They lacked the fleshy sweetness associated with modern apples, berries, or mangoes. Instead, they were more like protective casings, structures designed to shield seeds from harsh conditions and help them disperse. Some were dry and woody, others fibrous or winged, shaped by wind and gravity rather than animals. The true emergence of fruit as it is understood today came much later, during the age of flowering plants, known as angiosperms. This group began to rise to dominance during the Cretaceous period, roughly 140 to 100 million years ago. It was during this time that plants evolved a new strategy, one that would forever link them with animals. Fruits, in their modern form, are essentially matured ovaries of flowering plants. They surround seeds with tissue that can attract animals, encouraging them to eat the fruit and unknowingly carry the seeds elsewhere. This relationship between plants and animals became one of the most powerful forces in the evolution of life on land. But the earliest fruits that emerged during this time were unlike anything seen today. Fossil evidence suggests that some of the first true fruits were small, simple, and often quite tough. They likely evolved in dense, warm forests where competition for sunlight was intense. These forests were filled with early flowering plants, primitive insects, and eventually small reptiles and dinosaurs. The fruits produced in this environment were adapted to the conditions and the creatures that lived there. Some early fruits were likely consumed by insects, which played a role in both pollination and seed dispersal. Others may have been eaten by small vertebrates, but unlike modern fruits, which are often brightly colored and rich in sugars, these ancient fruits may have been more subtle, less sweet, more fibrous, and adapted to a narrower range of consumers. As flowering plants diversified, so did their fruits. Over millions of years, an incredible variety of forms emerged. Some developed thick outer shells for protection, while others became softer and more appealing to animals. This diversification was closely tied to the evolution of animals themselves. As new species appeared, plants adapted their fruits to match the behaviors and preferences of their potential dispersers. But not all of these fruits survived. Many belonged to plant lineages that eventually went extinct. Some were lost during major environmental shifts, while others disappeared due to competition with more successful plant groups. Climate changes, shifting continents, and mass extinction events all played a role in shaping which plants and which fruits would persist. One of the most significant turning points came at the end of the Cretaceous period, around 66 million years ago, during a mass extinction event that is widely associated with a massive asteroid impact. This event dramatically altered global climates, leading to the extinction of many plant and animal species. Forests were destroyed, ecosystems collapsed, and many early fruit-bearing plants vanished along with the creatures that depended on them. In the aftermath, surviving plants began to repopulate the earth. Flowering plants, in particular, proved remarkably adaptable. They diversified rapidly, giving rise to many of the fruit types seen today. But the fruits that came before, the earliest experiments in this evolutionary strategy, were gone. What makes these lost fruits so fascinating is not just their disappearance, but what they reveal about the process of evolution itself. They represent transitional forms, steps along a path that led to the complex relationships between plants and animals that define modern ecosystems. Each extinct fruit tells a story of adaptation, survival, and eventual loss. Scientists study fossilized seeds, fruit structures, and impressions preserved in ancient rock to piece together this story. In some cases, The internal structure of a fruit can be preserved in remarkable detail, revealing how it developed and how it might have functioned. These fossils provide clues about the environments in which these plants lived, the climate conditions they faced, and the organisms that interacted with them. There is evidence suggesting that some early fruits were adapted for wind dispersal, with lightweight structures that allowed them to travel across open spaces. Others show signs of having been consumed, with damage patterns that hint at feeding behavior. While it is difficult to reconstruct these interactions with complete certainty, the patterns are clear enough to suggest that even early in their history, fruits were part of a dynamic and interconnected system. Comparisons with modern plants help fill in some of the gaps. By studying how current fruits function, how they attract dispersers, protect seeds, and respond to environmental pressures, scientists can infer how ancient fruits might have behaved. However, it is important to recognize that many extinct fruits belonged to lineages that have no direct modern equivalent. Their exact appearance, taste, and texture remain unknown. The idea of tasting these fruits is, in a sense, impossible. Not only are they extinct, but the ecosystems that supported them no longer exist. The atmospheric conditions, the soil composition, the microbial life, all of these factors would have influenced their development. Even if one could be recreated, it would not truly be the same. And yet, their legacy lives on. Every fruit that exists today, from the simplest berry to the most complex tropical fruit, is part of a lineage that traces back to those early innovations. The diversity seen in modern fruits is the result of millions of years of experimentation, selection, and adaptation. In a way, modern fruits are echoes of a much older world. They carry within them the genetic memory of countless forms that came before, many of which have been lost to time. The sweetness, the colors, the textures that are so familiar today are the result of evolutionary pressures that began long before humans appeared. The story of these first fruits is not just about what was lost, but about what was made possible. By developing a new way to reproduce and disperse, plants opened the door to a deeper relationship with the rest of life on Earth. They became active participants in ecosystems, shaping and being shaped by the organisms around them. As climates shifted and continents moved, as species rose and fell, fruits continued to evolve. Some lineages thrived, others disappeared, but the fundamental strategy endured. It is a reminder that evolution is not a straight line, but a branching, complex process filled with experiments, some successful, many not. The fruits that humans know today are only a small fraction of what once existed. Hidden in the fossil record are forms that will never be fully understood, shapes that no longer grow, and flavors that no longer exist. They are part of a forgotten world, one that helps shape the present in ways that are still being uncovered. In the end, these ancient fruits represent more than just a lost chapter in the history of plants. They are a testament to the power of adaptation and the fragility of existence. Entire forms of life can emerge, flourish, and disappear, leaving behind only traces in stone and echoes in the living world. The first fruits were not made for humans. They were not sweet rewards or cultivated crops. They were solutions, answers to the challenges of survival in a changing world. And though they are gone, their influence remains, woven into every ecosystem, every forest, and every fruit that grows today.